Ladies and gentlemen, we meet again towards Shabbat, Parashat Miketz, which is also Channuka and is also Rosh Chodesh Tevet. And when we look at the Parsha to start off with, we look at this first pasuk, which really stands out, Vayhi Miketz Shnatayim Yamim. And it was after 2 years. After 2 years of what? We're not quite sure. But what happens then? Paro Cholem. We have a great king of Egypt who has a big dream. And in his dream is Omed, he's standing, he sees a lot of self-importance. V'hinei Omed al hayaor. And he's standing on the river Nile. Now, we must understand in the ancient world was an agricultural world. And if you're standing on the Nile provides irrigation. And you're not dependent on rain, you're not dependent on anything, you're totally independent. You have an endless amount of resources at your disposal. You're standing. So this Paro is standing with great importance and is actually controlling the world as far as finances is concerned, because he's standing on his river Nile. And very interesting. But what were these 2 years? So Chazal talk about Yosef, that his final 2 years, he was deep in a pit. As we know, Vayiritzu minabor, they brought him up from down in a pit, and they brought him to Paro. And Chazal in the Medrash, they bring a pasuk from Eov that says, Kates Sam Lachoshech. Vahimi Kates, it's the end of an era, it's the end of the darkness for Yosef, because Yosef down in those cells, in those dungeons, in this prison, was in the darkness. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, after 2 years, decided 2 years is enough of darkness, and he has to be taken out. And that is what the Medrash says. Higia Zman Natan Yosef Kama Shanim Yaseh Ba'afela Bebet HaAsurim. He was given these 2 years down in the darkness, and now the time is up. Kevan Shehigia HaKetz, because his 2 years are up. Chalam Paro Chalom. Therefore, this Paro had this dream, which means it's not because of the dream Yosef was taken out of the dungeon. The opposite. It's because HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that these 2 years are up. Therefore, he has to create a certain dream in the mind of an important Paro, an important king, in order to cause Yosef to come out, because his time of 2 years is up. Here I'd like to go away from our regular explanations, go a bit into homiletics, a bit of an idea that comes to my mind, which is our dear brothers and sisters that were hostages. Now let's look at this issue of these hostages. As I'm talking now, we only have one hostage left who is not alive, Ran Gavili, but all the rest of the hostages are already out. And when did they get into hostage? Yosef was thrown into the pit. The whole story of Yosef, he was thrown into the pit in Chodesh Tishrei, round about the same time that our hostages were taken in Simchas Torah, which is in Tishrei. They were taken in, very parallel. And then how did this whole story start? Because the brothers hated Yosef. It was hatred of brothers that brought about this whole episode, which is also very similar to our story of our hostages, I'm afraid. And then when he's down in the dumps, when he's down in the Shem Shamayim Shagur B'fiv, Yosef keeps in touch with his Yiddishkeit in any way he can. We hear these stories of one boy who kept Kiddush, and one boy who wrapped imaginary tefillin around himself, and a girl who kept saying Shema, because that's the only thing she knew. And even down in the dumps, our hostages tried to keep on their connection to their Yiddishkeit. And the fourth issue is they were in the prison. Most of them were in the prison for in the hostage for exactly 2 years. Exactly, Yosef was 2 years, and they were 2 years, and they were let out in Tishrei, and there was Yosef was let out in Tishrei. So were they let out in Tishrei. And then the most amazing thing is what seemed to have caused them getting out of being hostages, a dream of a big king and a big dream, and that's Trump, and that's Paro. And this is so parallel. The story is so parallel. It gives me a chill down my spine. And of course, the last thing is when Yosef is taken out of prison, he's taken straight to the house, to the palace of Paro, and many of these hostages were invited straight to the White House to meet the king. The parallel here, Hakadosh Baruch Hu doesn't only relate to history, but he dictates our history. And our Maseh Avot Siman Labanim, what happens to our ancestors, is a sign of what's going to happen to our children. So this is an amazing parallel, I think. But I'd like to take this one step further and tell you that this pasuk, Ketz Sam Lachoshech, this pasuk from Iyov, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says the darkness is enough, has got to do with Chanukah. How come? Because in the second pasuk of Bereshis, it says V'choshech al pnei tehom, that darkness was hovering above the depth. And what's the darkness? Say Chazal, Bereshit Rabbah tells us the Medrash, V'choshech ze galut Yavan. The Greeks were the choshech. The Greeks were the darkness. Why were they darkness? Because with their terrible decrees, they tried to put out the light of Torah. They tried to put out the light of Yiddishkeit. And they were trying to put the darkness, and therefore, how do we retaliate? By lighting the Chanukah candles. We add light. Where they try to add darkness, we add light. And that is our story, really, throughout history. But in the last 77 years, when we have Medinat Israel, it's not only adding light. We have our own army, and we have our own police, and we can actually run our own government and our own state. And Baruch Hashem, to such an extent, I just want to end with an idea that I heard once from Rav Chaim Druckmann, Zecher Tzaddik Livrocha, who on the last day of Chanukah, it'll be 3 years to his death. And the last Chanukah of his life, he stopped people singing Maoz Tzor in the middle of Maoz Tzor. He stopped them, and I have it on tape, and I'll send it to you. Together with this, I will send you this week. I'll send two short pieces. The second, you'll see it yourself, that he stopped them from singing. He's an old man. A few days before he died, he stopped people from singing Maoz Tzor in the middle. And he said the following: why in Maoz Tzor do we say the Ein Kates Limei Hara'ah? There's no end to our bad days. There is an end to our bad days. We have to believe that there's an end to our bad days. The fact that we've got 77 years our own state, that means we are coming towards the end of our bad days, and therefore we shouldn't sing Ve'ein Kates Limei Hara'ah. There's no end to our bad days. Yesh Kates Limei Hara'ah. There is an end to our bad days, like with Yosef, that there was an end to his suffering in the dungeons, and like with our hostages, there was an end. So in a wider way, we're coming towards the Geula. We see it is coming closer. And therefore we have to sing towards it and say, there will be an end to our long galus b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen.